do need some intervention, but I was drinking it in Paris before it was a scene. I mean, I'm not joking. We were literally confused for a little while in Paris back in 1989 because we were like, why are people calling it natural? That's weird. It's just wine. So
for our listeners, just kind of say like, what classifies a wine as a natural wine?
It doesn't. And that's frustrating because the wine world already has enough snobism in it, just like French food, unfortunately, has that connotation to it. But to me, wine is just something beautiful you share with friends. But I don't like shit chemicals in my food, so I just don't want it in my wine. That's just me. It's just a philosophy. So these are the people I've been hanging out with that all of a sudden now I say I'm with, Sebastian Riffaut in the Loire Valley, and their jaws drop open because apparently this guy's a rock star. And I'm like, Sebastian? Have you seen him? He's like a big old bear. He's like, plowing the field with his horse. I mean, like, why is he a rock star? But it's because he chooses to do very little between plowing that soil, no chemicals on the grapes, crushes it or leaves them whole cluster, puts it in a bottle, and you drink it. I mean, we don't even understand the word wine making because the raisins do all the work. When someone says they're the wine maker, I don't understand that. So it's just someone who takes time with things, just like the sourdough. So I like seeing a bottle with someone's first and last name on it. I like knowing that you're out there with your hands in the dirt versus a big factory with tours and tasting groups coming through trying to sell tons of bottles. I like the personalization of it.
Yeah, that's crazy because I mean, it is like catching on with like higher frequency and intensity here in the US. Like I feel like a lot of those natural wine producers are being recognized.
Yeah,
but it's still like
they're heroes.
Yeah,
they're
there's almost like a section at wine shops that say natural wines.
Yeah, all that is true. Every bit of it. I mean, I even saw where was that last year? I don't want to say the name on air, but it's a chain of grocery stores, and they had literally a box of wine that said orange. Like they're trying to cash in on what orange wine is. So I'm not going to say on loud. I'm not going to say on air. That's not fair to them. But anyway,
I know you were in New Orleans. That's the only reason I said that. So I was thinking, I was like, time out. There's only two.
No, it's a national. It's a national. But the thing is, so it's just people that take time to slow down and do things well. I mean, you tell me, is there like an industrial cannabis industry, or are there small producers doing something well? And I don't even know how that works.
And, I think when you say it like that and you look at that parallel, that's exactly like why we partnered with our sponsor. Callie's is a family-run organization. They grow all their own doja. They have their own grow. It's not that mass-produced stuff where it's automatically getting shoved into a jar and you look at it and it's already like wilted weed. So that's a really great analogy because you're exactly right. Like when you look for weed, most of the best growers are the ones that you buy directly from them. You don't actually buy it from a dispensary, but we can't really discuss that either. I want those names away on this account. But that is black market cannabis is kind of that theory is kind of got that stigma of the natural term of wine. So that's a great way to look at it.
I literally do not walk around. I do not sit down and say, oh, sourdough or oh, natural wine. I mean, we're talking about it right now. It's educational, which is kind of boring. I just like get it out of the way. If that's what you're doing, let's sit down and eat, drink, and have a good time. It's not something we discuss or go on and on about because then it makes you sound like an asshole. But it's just, we just have a good time. So people want to know how in the hell I know all these wonderful people. That's the whole point. It's people that are growing, fermenting. Basically, it's fermentation. Yeah, cheese, aged cheese, fermented wine, fermented beer, fermented, dough. It's great.
I can't wait to hang out with you in person. This is gonna be so much fun. But you mentioned like if those are your criteria for finding a restaurant, we would probably be fairly limited here in Denver. And we're kind of at San Francisco probably would be a little bit friendlier because the San Francisco sourdough. Yeah. But at the same time, like the bread game is coming along in Colorado as well. The elevation's a little bit fickle. But at the same time, we have some guys that are doing like Kelly Whitaker, who's growing his own grains and then going from mill all the way to his Piotr bread and his sourdough. And that stuff is some of the best in the state. So I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to some folks, here in Denver. So when you do come visit, we'll
I want
definitely
to shout out, who are those great guys over in, do you call it Reno or Rhino, the neighborhood? How do you
Rhino,
Rhino, they're on the corner. Is it,
Noble Riot.
yeah, I love those guys.
Troy and the team over there, they have fantastic selection, and they are one of the better, I guess we'll use the term natural wine providers here in the Denver bar scene for sure.
Yeah, in fact, when I was there, the guy, forgot who he was behind the bar, but one of the owners, and he was on his way to Venice, Italy. And of course, I've got a second place there. Troy, yeah, it was Troy, exactly.
Yeah.
And I gave him a list right then and there of where to go in Venice. And he said, "How did you do that so fast?" And I said, that's where all the natural bottles are.
They're so fantastic. That's
it's not fair, because there are some great restaurants, especially there in Denver, that don't subscribe to the natural, theory. They've got great food, and they've got a wine list that works for them and their clients. But when I'm flying into a place and I only have 48 hours, I can't, go everywhere as much as I'd love to. I have to have a starting point. So.
What's your restaurant in Denver the last time that obviously, Chris worked with Bobby, and I know that you know Bobby as well, but all bias aside, what's your banger restaurant in Denver for those that are trying to hunt on your spectrum?
Well, I was there. See, again, it was before COVID, and I don't think it's open anymore. Is Morin still open? Morin?
Oh, yeah, Max. They switched it over. They still own the location, and he's going to make it more of a steakhouse instead of a French style restaurant.
Okay. Well, it wasn't that I liked that it was French. I loved the husband and wife team there. Total badasses. Total what I call FPOV. Am I allowed to say the F word?
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll back up again. So I love Morin because of the husband and wife food and beverage couple.
Oh, McLain and
yeah,
I love those.
Yeah. Shout out to them, because I know they're going to hear this. But they've been with me in Europe, and what do you think we do? Eat and drink in all these places. But I loved when they were there, I loved they had what I call an FPOV, a fucking point of view. Just total, just badasses and spirited and sassy and cool. And I love the vibe. So even when you said a French restaurant, chef definitely is French, but I never felt like I was I never felt like I was in a snobby French place. Beautiful design, great natural light. This is the restaurant designer in me coming out, but it was just they had just had a great beverage program, and chef was like throwing caviar on anything fried, and I was just loving it. So that's the Southern French in me coming out.
I know, I couldn't agree more. I love those two. Mary Allison and McLain are great. And then they also had the raw oysters with Ben Wolven and that bar right there, so you could just sit there. They had a killer happy hour. Man, I missed that place.
I do too.
Their happy hour, you could get like $4 martini. You can get Vespers and like 6 oysters for like $10. You could sneak in there after work. Oh, fuck. That was a great call. And I love those two. I think they've got some other stuff in the works coming up, I think, Mary Allison and McLain. I saw they launched a new company. I want to give them a shout out. I can't remember what it is. So I'll find
It's Mary Wright, and she's on Instagram as Eat Drink Be Mary, Mary, and McLain.
Yeah, and they actually, I feel like they just launched something else. I can't remember what it was. They obviously do the big door prize. They do the Southern Meat and 3 deal. And then we would be remiss if we didn't give another shout out to our boy, Benny Bloom. I saw him last night, but he also does the pop-ups with Mary Allison and McLain when they do those here.
Where did you see Benny?
Benny last night was playing a little New Orleans trio set over at the Meadowlark Bar.
Okay. Did you say hi?
Yeah, of course. Someone gave him a big old hug. Told him I was actually talking to you today, in fact.
And he said,
oh, and then kept on keeping on. He was in prime Benny mode. He was having a big time.
Yeah. So there you go again, how the crossover goes between musicians and wine and food and travel, because if your listeners don't already know Benny, he's a part of a group called Lettuce, as in like salad lettuce, but Lettuce Funk. They play all over Europe. I actually saw them in a club in Paris, but didn't know anything about them. And then I was sitting at that bar, Morin, and I guess I was there and I left, and Benny came in after me, and I made a post, and he like grabbed Mary and said, "What the fuck? Paris is my kitchen was here?" And she said, "Yeah, she just left." He said, "I don't fucking believe it." So we got to be friends because he's a natural wine importer and distributor, but he's also a musician. But he also plays in Europe. And this summer, if your listeners can get over there, September the 3rd through the 5th, there's a huge natural wine fair on the beach with all these cool rock star, humble people actually coming over, winemakers coming. Benny's playing on stage, and I joked about, can I play the cowbell behind him? And he said, yeah, I'm Benny and you can be a jet. So I thought it was funny.
Nice.
So that's why people say, how do you know Benny? I'm like, we've actually never met.
He is an absolute hoot. And I feel like we should give their natural wine. It's called Benny and Zoid, and you can get it at Proof Proof Packaging down in on Larimer in like 36, or Walnut and 36. So you can get Benny and Zoid here in Denver, and they're actually coming on the podcast in like 2 weeks after you.
Okay.
So
Give
we'll
a
be
shout out
talking.
for me.
I will. We'll talk natural wine and New Orleans funk. So
Yeah, and talk to them about the wine of it in Spain. I'm sure they're going to want people to come over. It's going to be great.
When you invited me, I was just so elated. And then I have this other event that's also in Spain, or this one's in Spain a month later. So I was like, can I juggle? Can I go there for a month? Like, could I pull it off? Can I pull a Wendy? But it would have been nuts. It would have been nuts if it was. So I don't know if we'll be able to make the natural wine event, but I think, some of our listeners, before we dive into the next set of questions, we've talked a little bit about obviously Paris and then the Brooklyn. What are some of the most, you mentioned Copenhagen and Stockholm. That's sort of an interesting place for natural wine to kind of be birthing and showing up. Or are these more restaurant visits of friends of yours from the family?
What do you think?
A combination?
All of them, yeah, exactly.
You and I were talking about Icelandic natural wine not 2 weeks ago.
Oh, well, no, this is hilarious. So just for your listeners to know, this trip was not even in my realm of, well, let me take that back. The trip was always going back to Europe to go see my friends. Didn't know I was taking a camera crew, but we're jokingly calling it green lighting because of the COVID travel restrictions. It's like, how are you getting home? Which country do you go to next? Well, it depends on who opens up their borders. If they're green, I go. Right. So 3 weeks ago, I Googled something I never thought I'd Google, which was Iceland and natural wines, because I thought I was going to have to go to Iceland and quarantine for 10 days before I could go into London. And there you go. Case in point, I found really cool some really, really cool places there. So now the whole trajectory has changed 15 times. So anybody who thinks they want to do this, you better have a whole lot of patience, because restructuring visits and camera crews with, restaurants and people who put their calendars on hold for me, which meant the world, and then having to cancel because we weren't allowed into the country or etc. So last week, 3 weeks ago, it was Brooklyn, Iceland, London, Copenhagen, blah, 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 Berlin in there. Now the trajectory, if it stays the same, which we'll find out when I touch base with you guys, you're not going to know. I'm going to tell you which country I'm going to. Let's see if that's where I end up. But next week we're in Brooklyn. Then we hit Copenhagen, Stockholm, Paris, Croatia, Venice, Italy, Barcelona, Lisbon, and then down to the wine festival by the end of August. Yeah, that's it. 1st of September. But Copenhagen is probably, back to what you said, natural wine being a scene. I think Copenhagen is the one that brought a global attention to natural wine. A lot of the places there really did stop. I don't know if they stopped, actually. That's interesting. I met Copenhagen in its stage of small plates and natural wine. I never knew it before, but that was definitely 10, 12 years ago where that started happening. So everyone knows Renee Redzepi at restaurant Noma, put that kind of cuisine on the map. But there's lots of people, there are other people who are doing other great things, and he'd be the first to tell you that. So I'm there visiting him and some other people, but what's going on camera is actually